Hey there, another day, another unboxing. This is Tank Girl. I'm here in Chicago, hence a different background. This is the Moto Z3. The Moto Z3 that was launched yesterday here in Chicago at the Motorola event, and that will in the future be supporting 5G networking through a mod called the 5G mod with Verizon. So this is pretty exciting insofar that this is so far the only phone that we know will work with that mod. And I have one here in my hands, so let's take a quick look. A bunch of serial numbers here. You can see maybe, well, it's not too much actually. This is a Verizon phone. You thought they might have put some specs on here or something, but you can see here, Moto Z3 logo, Moto logo in the front. So here we go. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Dun, 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 dun. Another box. How exciting. So this is typical of Moto's packaging right now. There's actually a little bit more here, and just the other compatible with Moto mods, which is cool. They basically have this kind of drawer thing, so you just kind of pull, and they very nicely supplied me with a SIM card, which is really lovely, and there's nothing in here. And so then we have a little divider here that says Hello Moto, and then there's the actual phone. I can pull this out. Ta-da! Phone. And as you can see, if you just watch my Moto Z3 on Play unboxing recently, you really couldn't tell them easily apart by just briefly looking at them like this. There's just not much there to say. So let me remove the sticker. You guys always love it when I do. So here we go. Are you ready? 1, 2, and oh, there's some noise. Maybe this is not a good time to remove the sticker. So in the back, there's a camera pod. This is the same camera system that we saw last year on the Z2 Force. So apparently it hasn't changed at all. So it's a dual camera system. One is monochrome, one is color. I think it's like 12 megapixels, but I'm not exactly sure. I haven't looked at the specs. But basically, it was a bit of a disappointment last year. I hope the software has improved on this camera system. And now to the front. So here we go. Are you ready for that sound? 1, 2, 3. Oh, you love it when that happens. So the big news here is the same as the Moto Z3 Play. It is an 18:9 display, but instead of being a Quad HD OLED panel like in previous high flagship Z models, this is actually a 1080p, so not 1440p across. 1080p, 18:9. You know, very little bezel. Basically the same display we've seen on the Moto Z3 Play. And that's what it looks like. You've got a front-facing camera, earpiece, some sensors up here, Moto logo, and just like the Moto Z3 Play that we just reviewed recently, the power block button has been moved to the left side, which is really awkward and weird. And then the fingerprint readers on the right side here, right below the volume rocker. And again, it's weird because normally when you have an embedded fingerprint sensor on the side like this, it's actually a clickable one. So it turns into a power button as well. Sony does that, Nextbit did that, Razer does that. So Moto has a weird thing on their hands. We asked them about that, and they just think that it's nicer to have them separated. As you can see, this is a 4G device on Verizon, hence it shows the 4G LTE like a Verizon phone. This is locked, well, Verizon doesn't really lock their phones, but this is essentially a Verizon phone. Nothing much on the top other than the SIM card holder and a secondary mic. On the bottom, you've got the micro USB. Remember, there's not going to be any headphone jack on this phone because none of the high-end Z phones ever had headphone jacks anyway. So it comes as an adapter in a box. I'm pretty sure we'll find it later. And as you know, this back piece where the camera pod is has the Moto Mod contacts for the Moto mods. And this is where this little kind of surfboard-like attachment is going to come in and plug into the back to provide 5G functionality in early 2019. Now, I know you have a lot of questions, and we're going to be discussing these on the podcast. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, you should. It's mobiletechpodcast.com, about this phone and about the Moto, the mod, the 5G mod. So we'll get to that in a second. For now, let me put the phone aside, and let's go through the rest of the box. There's a divider here, and then I can just slide it open. Let's do it that way. And of course, there's going to be the usual Verizon and Moto documentation in here, starting with a SIM removal tool. Meet your Moto Z, product and safety information, important consumer safety information. So here, this should be kind of fun. You get to see all the details, you see. Cameras, flash, fingerprint sensor, Moto Mods connector, microphone. There's a lot of microphones. There's 2 more in the front, as pointed out here. 4 microphones for near field array for, the OK, whatever keyword. I don't want to say it on video. I don't want to trigger all your devices. But yeah, here's setting up your phone, micro SD support, SIM card, all that stuff. Pretty straightforward. I mean, nothing's different here from the Moto Z3 Play. So basically, it's the same thing. And of course, we've got some accessories in the box. We've got a Moto Turbo Power charger. This is a high-speed Moto charger with a USB-A connector. These are really nice. They're pretty compact. They're power delivery compliant, so I kind of like them. And then you've got USB Type-C cable here, Type-C end here, Type-A end there, so standard charging cable. And then we've got, interesting, a little lanyardy thing to probably tie your cord together. That's a nice little touch. And then the adapter that I mentioned before. This is a headphone adapter, USB-C to 3.5 millimeter standard headset. The thing about this adapter, this is an analog adapter. It's a completely passive adapter. So the audio is still in the phone. There's still a DAC in there and a headphone amp that feeds the analog audio through the USB-C port. This is unlike, say, the Pixel that uses a digital adapter and where the DAC and the headphone amp are inside this connector, and then it feeds out the analog. So that's basically the lay of the land. As you can see, there's nothing left in here. And again, here is that phone, the Moto Z3. So I didn't talk about the specs too much. This has got basically the same specs as last year. It's got a pretty large battery, 3,500 milliamps, I believe. It does have a Snapdragon 835, which is a really weird thing to do. And in fact, as I said earlier, the camera has the same settings, the same specs as the camera last year in the Z2 Force. This is not a Force device, so it doesn't have that special unshatterable screen, but it is the same specs as last year's Z2 Force. It's got a Snapdragon 835, which is a year-old processor, a high-end, mind you, processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 64 gigs of storage, and that's it. That's the phone. You're basically, in a way, you could call this the Moto Z2, because it is basically what the Moto Z2 would have been if they had released one last year. And that brings up all these questions. Like, why a Snapdragon 835? Now, it's only $480, which is the other thing that this is kind of really confusing, because the Moto Z3 Play that I reviewed recently and I did unbox has $500. It comes with a battery mod that's only a $50 mod, and it costs more than this phone, yet spec-wise it's less than this phone. It's not a Snapdragon 835, it's a 636, I think. And, it's got a lesser camera system. So this phone is weird. It's the Moto Z3. It came out in 2018, but it's really what it should have been, the Moto Z2 last year. In terms of specs, it's the last year flagship. But in terms of price, it undercuts its cheaper and lower spec sibling. So we discuss all this on the podcast. Tune in, mobiletechpodcast.com. More importantly, subscribe to the podcast. We're on iTunes. We're on Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Slacker, Stitcher. Tune in, a whole bunch of places. And further than that, I would say subscribe to the channel, like this video, and watch the other unboxing. All right. Cheers, everybody.